Minneapolis from Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia at en.wikipedia.org. Minneapolis is the largest city in the U.S. state of Minnesota and is the county seat of Hennepin County. The city lies on both banks of the Mississippi River, just north of the river's confluence with the Minnesota River, and adjoins Saint Paul, the state's capital. Known as the Twin Cities, these two cities form the core of Minneapolis Saint Paul, the 16th largest metropolitan area in the United States, with about 3.2 million residents. The U.S. Census Bureau estimated the city's population at 369,051 people in 2006. Minneapolis and Minnesota celebrate their sesquicentennials in 2008. The city's celebration coincides with the 150th anniversary of its first town council meeting, thought to have been held July 20th, 1858. The city is abundantly rich in water with 20 lakes and wetlands, the Mississippi riverfront, creeks and waterfalls, many connected by parkways in the chain of lakes and the Grand Round Scenic Byway. Minneapolis was once the world's flour milling capital and hub for timber, and today is the primary business center between Chicago, Illinois, and Seattle, Washington. America's most literate city, Minneapolis has cultural organizations that draw creative people and audiences to the city for theater, visual art, writing, and music. The community's diverse population has a long tradition of charitable support through progressive public social programs and through private and corporate philanthropy. The name Minneapolis is attributed to the city's first schoolmaster who combined Mini, the Dakota word for water, and polis, the Greek word for city. Minneapolis is nicknamed the City of Lakes and the Mill City. Section 1. History. Dakota Sioux were the region's sole residents until explorers arrived from France in about 1680. Nearby Fort Snelling, built in 1819 by the United States Army, spurred growth in the area. Circumstances pressed the Mdewakanton band of the Dakota to sell their land, allowing people arriving from the east to settle there. The Minnesota Territorial Legislature authorized present-day Minneapolis as a town on the Mississippi's west bank in 1856. Minneapolis incorporated as a city in 1867, the year rail service began between Minneapolis and Chicago, and joined with the East Bank city of St. Anthony in 1872. Minneapolis grew up around St. Anthony Falls, the only waterfall in the Mississippi. Millers have used hydropower since the 1st century BC, but the results of Minneapolis between 1880 and 1930 were so remarkable the city has been described as the greatest direct drive water power center the world has ever seen. In early years, forests in northern Minnesota were the source of a lumber industry that operated 17 sawmills on power from the waterfall. By 1871, the West Riverbank had 23 businesses, including flour mills, woolen mills, ironworks, a railroad machine shop, and mills for cotton, paper, sashes, and planing wood. The farmers of the Great Plains grew grain that was shipped by rail to the city's 34 flour mills, where Pillsbury and General Mills became processors. By 1905, Minneapolis delivered almost 10% of the country's flour and grist. At peak production, a single mill at Washburn Crosby made enough flour for 12 million loaves of bread each day. Minneapolis made dramatic changes to rectify discrimination as early as 1886, when Martha Ripley founded Maternity Hospital for both married and unmarried mothers. When the country's fortunes turned during the Great Depression, the violent Teamsters strike of 1934 resulted in laws acknowledging workers' rights. A lifelong civil rights activist and union supporter, Mayor Hubert H. Humphrey, helped the city establish fair employment practices and a human relations council that interceded on behalf of minorities by 1946. Minneapolis contended with white supremacy, participated in desegregation, and the African American civil rights movement, and in 1968 was the birthplace of the American Indian movement. During the 1950s and 1960s, as part of urban renewal, the city razed about 200 buildings across 25 city blocks, roughly 40% of downtown, destroying the Gateway District and many buildings with notable architecture, including the Metropolitan Building. Efforts to save the building failed, but are credited with jump-starting interest in historic preservation in the state. Section 2, Geography and Climate. This will be the last section until the next part. Minneapolis' history and the city's economic growth are tied to water, the city's defining physical characteristic, which was sent to the region during the last ice age. Fed by receding glaciers in Lake Agassiz 10,000 years ago, torrents of water from a glacial river undercut the Mississippi and Minnehaha riverbeds, creating waterfalls important to modern Minneapolis. Lying in an artesian aquifer and otherwise flat terrain, Minneapolis has a total area of 58.4 square miles, and of this, 6% is water. Water is managed by watershed districts that correspond to the Mississippi and the city's 3 creeks. 12 lakes, 3 large ponds, and 5 unnamed wetlands are within Minneapolis. The city center is located just south of 45 degrees north latitude. The city's lowest elevation of 686 feet is near where Minnehaha Creek meets the Mississippi River. The site of the Prospect Park Water Tower is often cited as the city's highest point, and a placard in Deming Heights Park denotes the highest elevation. But a spot at 974 feet in or near Waite Park in northeast Minneapolis is corroborated by Google Earth as the highest ground. Minneapolis has a continental climate typical of the upper Midwestern United States. Winters can be cold and dry, while summer is comfortably warm, although at times it can be hot and humid. On the Köppen climate classification, Minneapolis falls in the warm, summer, humid continental climate zone. The city experiences a full range of precipitation and related weather events, including snow, sleet, ice, rain, thunderstorms, tornadoes, and fog. The warmest temperature ever recorded in Minneapolis was 108 degrees Fahrenheit in July 1936, and the coldest temperature ever recorded was negative 41 degrees Fahrenheit in January 1888. The snowiest winter of record was 1983 to 84, when 98.4 inches of snow fell. Because of its northerly location in the United States and lack of large water bodies to moderate the air, Minneapolis is sometimes subjected to cold Arctic air masses, especially during late December, January, and February. The average annual temperature of 45.4 degrees Fahrenheit gives the Minneapolis Saint Paul metropolitan area the coldest annual mean temperature of any major metropolitan area in the continental U.S. End of Part 1. This sound file and all text in the article are licensed under the GNU Free Documentation License.